G'day viewers, both of you are welcome back to the All Thumbs Bum channel. Now, sitting here in my storage shed waiting for a bloke, I thought I'd wax lyrical about a situation I had with my gearbox. Now, the G25MR gearbox in the Mazda 626, MX-3, MX-6, a host of different Mazda models. It's a pretty heavy duty gearbox. It's in the MX-5 as well, I should add. But I was getting a bit of a noise coming out of it. Now, on deceleration with the clutch up, so with the clutch engaged, all right, so with the clutch up, I'd hear this resonant noise. It sounded a bit like a bloody old throw-out bearing from a 3-speed Holden from back in the bloody 70s and 60s, right? Sounded just like that. But as soon as I put my foot on the clutch, the noise went away. And it's getting louder. I've done about 1,000k in this car, and this noise has only happened since I've done the engine swap. So just to revisit what we did, I put a new clutch in when I put the big block 2.5 in there. I put a new throw-out bearing in there. So I'm thinking maybe I've done something wrong there. I took the flywheel off the 1.8, which is here in the storage shed, and took it to a specialist to see if it needed to be resurfaced. He said it was all right. I checked the pilot bearing, the little bearing in the middle. That was all right. Didn't feel rough to me, but I didn't replace it. Anyway, so I'm getting this noise when I'm driving around. It's getting louder and louder and louder. So I started doing some research online. I'm bloody looking at YouTube. I'm Googling my ass off. And I come up with this solution to my problem. Now, everything I read said it wasn't the throw-out bearing, which I replaced anyway, because that happens when you push the clutch down. And this noise was going away when I pushed the clutch pedal down. Everything I read was that it was the input shaft bearing on the main shaft going into the clutch. Now, to replace that, you need to pull the gearbox out. Now, this is possible according to the manual, but I don't have a hoist. I do my work in the driveway, and this was a bloody big job. It's the biggest job I've ever done. So, I was girding my loins to drop the gearbox, and I was evaluating whether I should do it in my sloping block under the carport, and the weather's getting down now. It's 11 degrees out here at the moment. Or pay for a professional to do the job. Take the car around to a shop, get them to rip the engine and gearbox out, and then do the gearbox then. The other thing I was going to do was go past a transmission specialist and get their opinion on that job. I did a bit more searching around. I started looking for gearbox failures on the Mazda gearbox. And you know what? Considering how many of these gearboxes are out there in Probes and Mazdas and MX-5s and MX-3s and MX-6s, there wasn't too many failed gearbox threads on the interweb. In fact, the only ones I could find were in the forums for the Mazda RX-7. And these cars are really, getting on now. And you know what? It's strange that this should be so isolated an issue. I should add as well that I did drop the gearbox oil to have a look at that, and it was perfect. And I had changed it as soon as I bought the car, so it had done about 4,000 kilometres total, that gearbox oil. And then because the MX-5 had the same gearbox, and there's a lot of MX-5s around, I stumbled on this thread from 2017 in the Mazda Miata forums and the American forums, and it said input shaft bearing noise on my 23,000 kilometre NB model Mazda Miata. Skimming through the post there, I found a statement from a guy, and he said this. And he said, "I've never seen an input shaft bearing go on a Miata transmission.
Several cars in our club with over 300,000 miles NA and MB, 5 and 6 speed, and one gearbox over 500,000 miles in its third car. All apologies to our American cousins. So this is the same gearbox once again as my car, but in rear-wheel drive format. Now, this is an interesting thread because further down there was a reference to a Mazda Miata Technical Service Bulletin from 1995. The bulletin describes a modification to the clutch release fork and the clutch release pushrod in order to help retain more grease in the junction between these parts. Otherwise, the symptom is described as a squealing noise from the clutch release bearing. Now, the grease type was recommended, or the grease type recommended was changed from a lithium grease to molybdenum-based grease. So this is the same as my car has in it. When I swap the engine, replace the clutch, etc., replace the throwout bearing, I had some silver anti-seize lying around and I used that to lubricate the clutch release fork. Now, checking the clutch release fork today, there's a tiny little bit of play, which I could show you, but it's just, you know, not even a millimetre of play, whatever that is in thou. And maybe it's just enough for that clutch fork to resonate under deceleration. And then, of course, as soon as you push down on the clutch pedal, engaging the clutch, there's no play there. Now, I got some white marine grease, and I jammed that in around the joint. I didn't even take it apart. I jammed that in around the joint, and the noises disappeared. Now, look, the reason I put this up is because I want people to know sometimes it's not as bad as you think. You can read the internet and interpret what's going on and believe that you've got a big problem with the car, and it may not be that bad. You've got to be able to look at these things. Now, the problem that we have now is these forums are dying. Everybody's going over to Facebook groups, posting their stupid questions without thinking about what the fuck they're doing. These forums are dying. And when you search in Facebook, you're never going to find this sort of information. You know what I mean? You get a lot of stuff coming up from forums, and like I said, this forum was from 2017, but you know had information from 1995, and you know you might remember 1995. Not a lot of internet around then, but there are the service bulletins around. It's always worth having a check. It's worth doing the cheap, shitty things first. I was getting ready to pull this gearbox out, and all I had to do was put 1 cent worth of grease around the joint, and I saved myself all that trouble. Maybe if I'd taken it into a less than reputable shop, they would have charged me $2,000 to take the clutch out of the car. They might have done the work, but they might have just put the grease in the joint, and I wouldn't have known the difference. So this is a public service that I'm posting this issue up for you all. And sorry, it's a little bit dry, but I believe the information is valuable. Good on you, blokes, and get on with driving your bloody MXs.